You guys see this? The only reason this isn't going to become law, I hope, is because of the Senate filibuster. Marjorie Taylor Greene's "it's a felony to provide health care to trans children," or sorry, gender-affirming care to trans children, punishable with up to 10 years in prison. That bill made it through the House. 3 Democrats voted in favor of it, by the way. Though 4 Republicans voted against. So, yeah, it cancels out. There's actually 2 stories here. The NHS made the rule this article is talking about, then the House bill. Yeah, is this not about the House bill? Okay. This is the right, I was reading chat. This is the, so there's 2 things here. You're right. Thank you. There's 2 things here. This is the DHS, which has implemented a set of proposals restricting the use of puberty blockers, hormone therapy, and surgical interventions for trans children by cutting off Medicaid and Medicare funding from hospitals that provide those services and prohibiting Medicaid dollars from being used to fund those procedures. So that's already done. That's happening. This is regulation from the Department of Health and Human Services. That's out there. That's not going through Congress, you know? Of course, this could be legally challenged because the appropriation of funding of Medicaid and Medicare, the money that runs through those, is subject to congressional approval. So this could be challenged, but I think this is going to be staying for a while. Medicaid programs in slightly less than half of states currently cover gender-affirming care. At least 27 states have adopted laws restricting or banning the care. The Supreme Court's recent decision to uphold Tennessee's ban means most other state laws are likely to remain in place. The proposal announced by Kennedy and his deputies are not final or legally binding. They have to go through a lengthy rulemaking process, including periods of public comment and document rewrites before the restrictions become permanent. So we still have some time. However, I'm being real with you guys. Time might be running out a little bit on that one. For trans youth specifically. On this one, this pretty much only affects blue states. I know you said it's not likely to pass the Senate. That's a different thing. This is likely going to pass. It just takes a while for all the T's to get, crossed and the I's dotted. The T's sure are getting crossed. That's fucking true. That's facts. Pretty sure trans healthcare is written into our state constitution. Doesn't really have anything to do with the implementation of this rule specifically. So anyway, that's super, super, super bad. Now let me look up that House bill.
Tonight, the U.S. House approved a bill that would criminalize gender-affirming care for minors. That bill would make it a Class C felony, punishable by up to 10 years in prison for doctors who provide treatments like puberty blockers or surgeries. Now, it's not clear if the Senate will take up the same measure, where it is unlikely to get enough Democratic support to pass.
So it's a two-pronged attack, okay? On one hand, the Department of Health and Human Services is pushing to strip funding from hospitals that provide gender-affirming care to minors, and also to prevent Medicaid funds from being used to that end. Whereas on this end, in Congress, this would make it a felony to provide gender-affirming care to minors. So it's 2 different. One's a regulation that only affects the federal government and its spending. The other one, this one, would just flat out make it like an actual crime to do this. So yeah, it's pretty bad. This is from Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I heard was woke these days. I don't know what happened there. I was assured on Morning Joe that she was woke now. The Protect Children's Innocence Act, sponsored by MTG of Georgia, would make it a Class C felony to treat minors with gender-affirming care like surgeries and puberty blockers. If enacted, the bill could imprison doctors who provide such care for up to 10 years. 3 Democrats supported the measure, while 4 Republicans were opposed. Somebody find those 3 Democrats? I'm just curious. 3 House Democrats. Henry Cuellar of Texas, Don Davis of North Carolina, and Vincent Gonzalez of Texas. Excellent, thank you. You don't need to ban Goth Gamer Girl for that. 3 pedophiles? Oh, almost certainly. The ACLU described it as the most extreme anti-trans legislation ever considered by Congress. A second bill, sponsored by Dan Crenshaw, prohibits federal Medicaid funding for gender transition procedures for minors. Well, this is pretty much already covered by the Department of Health and Human Services regulation. So, cool. Yeah, it's pretty bad, guys, you know? Anyway, this is likely not going to make it through the Senate. It's just not... I really do not think they're going to get the votes they need to beat the filibuster. But at the same time, yeah, the DHS rule on its own might be enough. Pretty bad. I haven't even seen much mainstream media coverage of this, even though these two measures together are by far the most aggressive anti-trans legislation yet given like serious consideration. This is about as bad as it gets, honestly. Ever. I mean, you know, mainstream national coverage. We can take a look at Dr. Oz and RFK Jr. talking about it from the platform of the Department of Health and Human Services.
Vulnerable Americans, and the misuse of these statutes for these purposes injures the statutes themselves and injures other people who are entitled to that protection and who Americans want to see protected. Our proposed rule will reassure recipients of HHS funding that policies preventing or limiting the sex-rejecting procedures do not violate disability non-discrimination requirements. Finally, our Assistant Secretary of Health, Admiral Brian Christine, today signed a public health message to inform healthcare providers, families, and policymakers that current evidence does...
It is really fucking rough.
...not support over...
Let me go through the three major categories. Puberty blockers, reduce bone density, alter brain development, which is a real problem when you're 11, 12, 13 years of age. And
holy shit, really? Stopping puberty alters brain development? That's crazy. They don't write that on the back of the cereal box.
Disrupt sexual function for the rest of your life.
Disrupting sexual for the rest of your life? That's not true. Dr. Oz hates the disrupted sexual function of the 10-year-olds these medications are provided to.
Oftentimes.
Hates that shit.
Cross-sex hormones cause irreversible changes, including infertility, loss of sexual function, even cardiovascular issues, as well as long-term endocrine problems. And of course, the surgical interventions where you remove healthy organs, despicable and reprehensible as it is, permanently alter appearances and destroy children's lives. So let's talk a moment right now about the big question. This dangerous fast-track approach in invasive treatment, what it really does is slap a Band-Aid on a much deeper pathology, a much deeper problem, the underlying issue of gender dysphoria. It denies patients the opportunity to be seen for who they really are. The doctor can't look them in the eyes and treat them like a child that's confused and lost and needs help. They become an opportunity. They become eventually a victim. Reasonable evidence-based objections that a child's confusion might resolve over time have been ignored, even though it makes common sense, and it turns out from numerous studies now in Europe to be true. Again, we outlined these in the op-ed. And this is not...
I can't believe that over the course of my streaming career, it went from like internet arguments to DHHS arguments, you know? It ramped up in severity and in prominence so quickly. No one's even talking about trans people anymore. Now it's all affordability, Venezuela, illegal migrants, whatever else. I guess the DHHS is just covering what they can. In fairness, it's not like they have much going on. They spent 2 entire weeks talking about building jungle gyms in airports to keep people healthy. So they're probably just looking for anything to occupy their time.
How clinicians respond to the care of other pediatric issues, but it's how we respond to pediatric adolescent mental distress. And the medically honest approach is to at least start slowly, the least invasive possible, psychotherapy, counseling, including family counseling, evaluation of other conditions like ADHD and autism, and of course treatment of the anxiety and depression that so often is included with this diagnosis.
This is so British coded. Do you have a license to transition? Sorry, first we need to talk to you for a year, and then every single person you know, your family and friends, every teacher you've ever had. Okay, then what we need to do, all right, is we need to make sure you're perfectly mentally healthy except for the dysphoria. You can have no other conditions. Dysphoria has to be on its own. It's damned if you do, damned if you don't, because if you have any other conditions like anxiety or depression, you know, from the dysphoria. They're like, well, that's the problem, not the dysphoria. But then if you have no anxiety and you have no depression, they're like, then what's the fucking problem? You're perfectly functional. Clearly, there's no issue with your dysphoria, you know? If there was an issue, then why aren't you unhappy?
There's lots of reasons we're having this problem. Social media is obviously a concern. There's been an explosion of discussions within children's groups about these topics. The surge has also been accompanied by healthcare professionals advocating that there's not going to be any opportunity to push a child to think twice about the decision they might have wandered into mistakenly in a whimsical moment. And 57% increase in suicide rates over the last great data we have, which is from the teens, is also a concern, with teenage children bearing the brunt of this. American taxpayers should not have to foot the bill for ideologically driven experiments on our nation's youth, and hospitals that we deem must meet the minimum quality standards of care and safety.
The lesson you have to take from this is that in order to truly advocate for liberation, you need a maximalist approach on it, you know? This is why all of the assimilationists fail in the end. It's never enough to meet with people like this or to exist in an environment like this and be like, I agree some people go too far, but, you know, it's not been shown scientifically that it's bad to do my thing, you know, like Blair White, whatever the fuck. You need to just overwhelm it. Like this cultural tendency just has to be annihilated. You know, it has to be crushed and stomped into the ground. It's not like he believes any of the shit he's saying. Obviously, he's just repeating talking points. It's not like he's got sincere positions that you would have to debate and convince him otherwise on. But there are people out there who are like that. And, you know, I'm going to be real with you guys. It's very frustrating, especially for you justice-obsessed autists out there. But they are not going to be convinced. The only way you can convince these people is with power. You're not going to walk up to them and go like, here's 50 trillion arguments proving I'm right. They won't be moved by it. They never will. It's just never worked that way. You don't convince people to not be racist by walking up to them and debunking racism. 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't work that way. You convince them out of racism by making the environment they're in so anti-racist that they have to adapt to survive. And that's what we have to do, okay? We have to make people like Dr. Oz feel like they are on Tumblr in 2015, day in and day out, okay? We need to make every conservative feel like they're the new norm, you know? You've got like the non-binary dog and the daughter who's at woke school or whatever. Like you will become woke, not because we've convinced you, because you're incapable of being convinced. You don't respond to rational arguments, you know? You just need to be surrounded and suffocated. Old friend of mine fell into transphobia, gave him every counter-argument, and he was left with nothing. He resorted to laughing and mocking me. You cannot reason with these retards. It's really sad, yeah. But like, remember that they are latching on to bigotry as a compensate for some emotional deficiency, right? Happy people don't act like this.
Should not be conducting these experiments when we know so little about what is happening with our youth. Now the important part. For these reasons, and I can go on and on, this document, the white paper that the Secretary commissioned is over 300 pages long. We're taking major steps at CMS to stop a funding process that has led to irreversible medical interventions with 2 major actions. The first, we're announcing a notice of proposed rulemaking that ends taxpayer funding of sex-rejecting procedures for children in Medicaid and CHIP, full stop. We don't provide health care to every child, but at 53%, we've got most, and we're not going to let taxpayer money go to hurt these children, and those children will no longer be hurt with this ideology. We know that inflicting these procedures on young people costs them and the Medicaid system countless dollars, not just in medical bills, but also all kinds of downstream issues, while providers reap the rewards. Too many providers inappropriately profit from carrying out these destructive procedures, and I'm just going to go through this grotesque laundry list of prices just so you're on the same page with what Secretary Kennedy started.
This is what it takes to make a Republican upset about the cost of health care. It's gender affirming care, and for Trump specifically, it's if they're trying to renew the ACA subsidies, and that's it. Apart from that, they're totally fine with it. They never have a solution, mind you. They just selectively point out the problem.
According to a 2022 JAMA data, so it's very recent, the typical vaginoplasty, a procedure a child does not need, costs $60,000.
That's pretty complicated, right?
Shockingly, a phalloplasty, the creation of a penis, costs on average in America according to this data, high quality, $150,000 per child. I do believe, with doing some work, that these prices have continued to increase with increasing manufactured demand. And I must point out that the creation of a vagina, in that case of a phalloplasty.
Yesterday, the American Association of Pediatrics lost funding because they insulted RFK. That's cool. I love my dying country. Department of Health and Human Services has terminated several multi-million-dollar grants to the American Academy of Pediatrics following the association's criticisms of the policies of the Health Secretary RFK Jr. The funding cuts, which affect projects focused on issues including fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and early identification of autism, were first reported by the WAPO and made without prior notice to the AAP. Nice. Well, all right. Just another day in the life.
Or a scrotoplasty where you add testicles, that's extra. This is a pathology that has afflicted the medical profession. It is shameful.
Low IQ fash slop, by the way. And such a degradation of the, HHS for them to like, hey, everyone, get around. We're going to say testicles. Yeah, they make balls. They have no real arguments. They're just relying on appeals to emotion. Hey, did you know that complex voluntary medical procedures are sometimes expensive? Did you know that, it's penis and balls? Pussy, 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 pussy. It's meant to shock and outrage. There's no real argument here. I mean, it's expensive, yeah? And fucking everything is.
That clinicians have profiteered off this. I do not understand how it could possibly have been tolerated by the leadership of these institutions, but it will no longer be funded. And I can tell you, if they're so diehard desirous of helping children and they don't get paid, the question is, will they do these procedures? And I think we know the answer. The second big thing, that's $250 million over the next decade of savings to the taxpayer, but that's
crazy. That's like not very much at all. Like even a little bit. $250 million for the entirety of like gender affirming surgery over a decade. That's like a infinitesimally small fraction of healthcare costs,
relevant to this issue compared to the harm to the next generation, to our future, because kids are always our future. Second, to reinforce the need to protect our children, we are announcing that certified Medicare and Medicaid hospitals, pretty much everyone in the hospital in the country, will no longer be permitted to perform certain sex-rejecting procedures on children. Any hospital that does offer sex-rejecting procedures to vulnerable populations of pediatrics...
This is extremely weird euphemism to use, by the way, sex-rejecting, because it makes the pedophilia joke so easy, We don't want children to be sex-rejecting? Okay. I know they're always stumbling around for like the most, it's like using Jew hating instead of anti-Semite. They're always trying to go for the most evocative synonym of what it is they're trying to describe, They care less about specificity or accuracy and much more about like the punch you're supposed to feel, but this one just doesn't land at all. It sounds really stupid.
Of pediatric age kids will no longer be able to participate in the Medicare and Medicaid program. We want our hospitals returning to healing, not harming the patients entrusted with their care, or they're going to pay a very steep price. These actions are part of an all-government effort led by President Trump and spearheaded by Secretary Kennedy to protect vulnerable individuals and genuinely make America healthy again. This is not just smart, science-based health policy. It is our moral duty, as Senator Humphrey mentioned 50 years ago. I'm passionate about this issue. My whole team is passionate about this issue. Secretary Kennedy.
Didn't Dr. Oz not used to be anti-trans, or at least not to the same extent? It's just something he leaned into a lot after he ran as a Republican senator. Same as Trump. Yeah. I mean, same, like many such cases, right? It was the most obvious script ever. I mean, I guess it shouldn't be much of a surprise that Dr. Oz would be a grifter. That was his entire bit, right? That was his whole show.
Bless you for pushing forward on this.
Thank you, Dr. Oz.
Oh shit! Do we have like D-trans puppets that we've paid to be here?
One of the most transgender ideology to America's children. Cutest and
health service. Welcome to you all, but especially welcome to you, Chloe. Today,
The fuck
we
are
are
you?
taking decisive action to protect America's children from chemical and surgical mutilation and to restore evidence-based medicine and gold standard science to the forefront of federal health policy. What we found in our gender dysphoria review was truly alarming. From 2016 to 2019, the number of sex-rejecting procedures performed on children tripled.
Yay.
And despite the mounting evidence of harm and the reversals by European countries, the previous administration and my predecessor were driven by a warped ideology and a radical political agenda. And that is why I am signing this public health message today, to ensure that healthcare providers understand their responsibility to put children's health and safety first. As medical professionals, we have an ethical obligation to provide excellent care to our patients informed by the best evidence we have. Family, I am
The world works. Transition. They're available for.
No detrans testimonies, I suppose. Here's Dr. Oz supporting a trans child in this TV show. I don't know if I'll be able to show this because it would be like...
That very question is different. And when did you recognize?
He said, you know, like transgender.
A little angry.
Decide how to dress Josie. How do you decide?
Yeah. Probably old enough to know content ID. You can never know that, especially with old episodes of TV. You can never know that. It's all grifts? Yeah, of course. None of them actually care or believe. I gotta say, in a weird way, it's kind of heartening to know that none of the talking points have advanced. Like, every single anti-trans talking point is exactly the same as it was 5 years ago. No adjustment. The evil in you to have a show where you bring on trans children for the views, then betray them later. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, man. There have always been lots and lots and lots of grifters. I feel like if we want civilization to survive in the age of social media, in the age of like the internet, of mass content, we need to find a way to make us broadly more intolerant of grifting. Like we need to revitalize the importance of sincerity. People need to care about it more. Right now, the Republican Party doesn't give a fuck about it. They love being lied to. They actively enjoy it. I think they like the fact that they're in a position where it's advantageous for people to lie to them. They like being lied to because it must mean that there's some kind of cultural power to their side. There's a value in grifting in that direction. Not so much in the left, but, you know, liberals are still pretty susceptible to it, I suppose. I think it's a kink thing. Wouldn't the world be a lot more fun if that was the case?